and we're going to continue on our series with memorial stones. And this is the second to last lesson we're going to do today. Next week we have something special for Christmas, and then on the 31st will be our final lesson, and we'll bring this to a close. So let's get our main verse as we begin. Joshua 4:4-7. This is where our title, Memorial Stones, comes from.
Then Joshua called the 12 men whom he had appointed from the children of Israel, one man from every tribe. And Joshua said to them, "Cross over before the ark of the Lord your God into the midst of the Jordan, and each one of you take up a stone on his shoulder according to the number of the tribes of the children of Israel, that this may be a sign among you, when your children ask in time to come, saying, 'What do these stones mean to you?' Then you shall answer them that the waters of the Jordan were cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When it crossed over the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. And these stones shall be for a memorial to the children of Israel forever."
Okay, let's begin. This series, if you're here for the first time, I've been doing two things. Number one, I've been telling stories about our history and of our church and our principles of our fellowship, of how we operate and how these came about. So let's talk first of all about support and ethics. My father experienced the church world. Mostly he was saved in a denomination called the Foursquare Gospel Church. For a very short time, he helped found an independent church in Scottsdale, Arizona, down in the valley in the Phoenix area. And so he discovered something that troubled him, and that was, it's universal, the human tendency to be selfish. So now you have Christians who are all supposed to be in this together for the Lord Jesus, but what he found is that human selfishness would be at work even in the kingdom of God. They would not help someone else in need. And now we're talking about pastors and churches, I'm talking about in particular. They would not help someone or have anything to do with someone lower than them. My dad discovered this. He was low on the totem pole, and so because of that, there were, in his opinion, there were people, they wouldn't have anything to do with him because he couldn't do anything for them. So therefore, he was ignored, and he felt that was not just unique to him, as others who were small, struggling, not important in their eyes, is that you had people, they just wouldn't have anything to do with you. They wouldn't help you. Or another thing he saw is if there was someone that they were not so much lower than you, if they were an equal, they were somewhat on the same level, they viewed others on their same level as competitors. So human selfishness, I'm not going to help you because you might rise and get ahead of me. And one of the things that was very troubling to him is he saw pastors who would violate other pastors or other churches for a personal advantage. You remember in one of the very early lessons, when we began in our church, we didn't have any homegrown evangelists. So the evangelists that we had, all of them, of course, were from outside of our church. And remember, I told you a story. We had a man that he considered to be a friend and would invite to preach, is giving expression. And while the man is coming and preaching, he's also meeting people and showing them in the Old Testament a scripture about tithing to the priest and getting people. So think about this. He is invited. We're going to raise an offering and give it to him to support him. But he secretly is meeting with people and telling them, you send your tithe to me. So because that was the church world, is that probably this man had been raised in an atmosphere where they didn't take care of evangelists, and because he had a dishonest streak in himself, there's no excuse for it, but he probably got used to, you got to take care of yourself because they're not going to take care of you. So now God begins to bless our church, and we began to plant churches. And so my father saw the vision according to the Bible of the Bible plan of fellowship. Fellowship. We are a fellowship, not a denomination. And I repeat again so you understand this. A denomination is groups of people, groups of churches. What holds them together? Laws, bylaws, legal structure. You have to according to the bylaws. But the Bible pattern is not a denomination held together by laws, but fellowship. Fellowship is people, pastors, churches, bound together or working together, not by laws, but by common cause. Philippians 1, verse 5.
For your fellowship in the gospel from the first day until now.
Okay, he is writing now to a church, and he says he is commending them for their fellowship in the gospel from the first day until now. And that word fellowship, the word literally means joint sharing in the Greek. It comes from two words, joint sharing, but literally partnership. So he's writing now to a church, and he said, we are partners in the gospel. In other words, he's not writing saying you have to because the bylaws say so. He says you chose to partner, and that is what we are, is the idea of fellowship. 1 Thessalonians 3, verse 2.
And sent Timothy, our brother and minister of God, and our fellow laborer in the gospel of Christ, to establish you and encourage you concerning your faith.
Okay, now you see here in this, that word fellow is the same word fellowship. It has the same idea, joint. So he is our joint laborer, our co-laborer. In other words, he's saying, this is a man, he is another pastor, but I sent him to your church to establish you, encourage you in the faith. And so now Pastor Mitchell began to get this understanding how we should organize this growing group of churches. He was deliberately, I do not want to be a denomination, I want fellowship. So fellowship involves mutual benefits. If you are connected to something larger than yourself, you gain benefits. You are helped by other people. Romans 1, 11 and 12.
I long to see you, that I may impart to you some spiritual gift, so that you may be established, that is, that I may be encouraged together with you by the mutual faith both of you and me. Okay,
there are benefits, and there can be many benefits. When we send couples out, there are, of course, financial benefits. We support them. But I can tell you, I have pioneered twice. There is something profound about having a fellowship. You are laboring and telling people of something that they have never seen before. Our aim is new converts. We want people to get saved. So we're getting raw sinners saved. It is a wonderful benefit of fellowship when a pioneer couple can bring them to other area churches, can bring them to a rally, bring them to a conference, because it expands their mind. Lisa and I pioneered in Launceston, Tasmania, We're on an island. We couldn't easily take people anywhere. There was nowhere to take them to. But we had an impact team come from our mother church, and we had there was something so powerful about ordinary Christians who came, because human nature is like this. We're telling them things, they're going, yeah, but you're the pastor. Lisa would say, yeah, but you're the pastor's wife. But now they saw, in their mind, ordinary Christians, like, oh. And I had people from that time, they dramatically changed. That was a benefit. That's what fellowship does. We gain benefit by being connected to other people. I remember one of our converts, one of the couples, Mike and Alina Cook. Mike had been coming, didn't have a lot of revelation. From that time, Mike Cook gained revelation. He now is pastoring today. That's the benefit of fellowship, mutual obligations. This is the second part. And so mutual obligations. So you get mutual benefits. That's one side. You gain by being connected to something larger. But fellowship means you also have obligations. If you're connected to a larger group, you can't just live for yourself. You can't just act, I think, I feel, I want. It's not okay to only decide for you. You are obligated to do what's right for other people. Romans 14, verse 7.
For none of us lives to himself, and no one dies to himself.
Okay, this is just a Bible principle, is if you're a Christian, you don't just make decisions for you. Everything you do should be, how will this affect my brother or my sister? And in fellowship, as we begin to plant churches, pastors and churches have mutual benefits, but they have mutual obligations as well. Think about some lessons here of how our foundation is built. Here's the first lesson. We are obligated to try and not harm our brothers and sisters or other churches. Okay, so now we have pastors. They're going to go start a church. They're going to begin to build. All right. You remember this. You are obligated to not hurt other churches, your other fellow pastors or brothers and sisters. This can be many, many things. Let's just hit a few of them. In a larger city, one of the things is in larger cities, we plant multiple churches. And so we learn something over time is, in a larger city, you're going to open a church. Don't open a church on top of your brother. Okay, I found a building and it's 1 block from your church. That's not okay, because you are obligated to not do that. We have a simple rule of thumb in bigger cities: be 2 miles away. That would be from another existing fellowship church. That's an obligation. That's what we try to aim for. As churches begin to grow, you discover something is we have people that just show up from other churches. So we try to build into pastors and understand if someone shows up from another fellowship church, we call the church they're from. Where did you come from? I came from such and such a church in California, Florida, Massachusetts. We're going to call the pastor. Who is this guy? This guy showed up in our church. We want to know. And then they say, yeah, he's a pervert, psycho, terrorist, killer. Okay, no, you can't come here. So that is protective. That's one of the things. But it also is you're helping your brother. And that it's not okay. So we're going to check on them. We don't receive immoral people. You can't be immoral at one church and just skip. Come to another fellowship church, we're going to check rebellious people and on and on. That is an obligation that helps try and prevent conflict. One of the important things that my father put in is that you don't solicit people to move to your church. Because human selfishness is like this, is your church needs money and you know of a brother in another church and he's got a lot of money. So you start saying, do you know the quality of life in Prescott here? So this is how the church world operates. You target people. You need a musician, need a new piano player. So you know that brother across town has a great piano player. So you start, man, the Lord is, I've just been praying. We just need it. You know, I could move. That's the church world. So we don't do that. That's not okay, or just trying to gain numbers. And so these are things that we try to prevent. Another area has to do with evangelists. Going back to my story, the evangelist who was violating the Prescott church, who invited him and was going to pay him, that's not okay. So Pastor Mitchell put in from the beginning, when we have visiting speakers, how do they get here? We will pay their expenses. If someone flies here, we'll pay the airfare. Their car will pay the mileage or whatever it takes. We're trying to bless their ministry, but it also is protective. If evangelists are supported, then they don't have to work scams, right? So we're going to pay their expenses. We're going to feed them. This is, you understand, in the church world, often when you have a visiting speaker, it's like, you know, we got a lady, she's got a back room on the porch. It's a little cold in the winter, but man, we'll save a lot of money if you stay with that family. That's what my dad was raised with, and he said, absolutely not. We don't do that. So we put them up in a hotel, we feed them, take care of expenses, and then, of course, we take a love offering. We will support them, and we have for evangelists a guaranteed minimum so that their family can eat and survive. But there's another side to that, is we require of evangelists, when they come, you are not going to counsel people. So when they come in, they don't understand what's going on, they don't know the people. And so it might be easy for them to give advice that might go against what the pastor's been working with them. You're not going to counsel. You're not going to solicit people for money. And so these are things that are protective. That's fellowship. So the lesson, you will not try and harm or try not to harm your brothers and sisters or other churches. Another lesson is fellowship means we are obligated to help other churches and support other churches. From the beginning, when we planted the first church in Wickenburg, Arizona, we began sending impact teams. And originally they called these guerrilla teams, not G-O-R-I-L-L-A, but G-U-E-R, guerrilla. This is warfare. And that was confusing to me as a child. Why are we sending guerrillas there? I don't get that. But so we change it now to impact teams. But this is the point. When we sent the Burrows to Wickenburg, we didn't just say, God bless you, brother, you labor. We went down and evangelized for them. Close by, when we planted a church in Cottonwood, in Tucson, in Flagstaff. Impact teams are foundational to our fellowship. And from early days when we plant a church, men are receiving impact teams, but they also should start building in, we send, we help other churches to succeed. We're not competitors. What Dad was used to is, I'm not going to help you because you might do better than me. I don't want you to succeed, so I don't help you. Fellowship is, how can I bless you? Impact teams is one of the ways, and especially you're doing that to help smaller churches. So that is impact teams. Support of area-wide events. One of the things as churches begin to grow, we have events that are not just for a church, for an area, a rally, a pioneer rally, or different kinds of rallies. And so we support those. And that is an expectation. If you are in an area, when we send a church to an area, you are going to support. You're not just going to go and do your own thing and be asking for benefits. You come help me. When there is an area-wide event, we expect that pastors and churches will participate. And one of the very important things, and I know that people are watching all over the world, let me say something about support. In our fellowship, you don't just support your own tribe. Tribalism is deadly in the larger work of God. I'll explain this. What happens is we have what we call wings of the fellowship. So you now have Prescott and our churches, Tucson and their churches, Chandler and their churches, Tempe and their, on and on and on, each conference center. Human selfishness starts being like this to be tribal. Okay? Tribalism means loyalty to your own tribe. And by tribe now, I'm not talking about natives, I'm talking about churches, wings of the fellowship. So tribalism is ugly, and Christians do this. This is something we can survive. We've survived rebellion. We will not survive tribalism if you practice this. So what happens is people in their tribe, they're suspicious of everybody else who's not from their tribe. The only good ones are my people, right? If we're from Prescott, I'm suspicious of everybody else except for from Prescott. This is what happens. The only ones who are good, you're only good if you're from Chandler, Tempe, Tucson, San Antonio, El Paso, wherever it is around the world. That is disgusting. We are in this together. And so suspicion, there are people that refuse to ever participate, ever help any other tribe. I won't help you. You're not from my wing of the fellowship. That's disgusting. And that is not okay. So we have people that are doing this. They don't mind receiving benefit, but they will never participate. They isolate their people. They can be in an area where there are many other wings of the fellowship, but they will never attend. They keep their people from attending. That is disgusting. It's from hell. And it will hurt us in the long run. So you are pastors, if you are watching this and you are tribal, you're hurting yourself. You're hurting your own people. And I'm telling you, you're putting seeds of destruction in. I have watched this play out. Wherever I have seen through the years a man who practices tribalism, people who practice tribalism, I warn you, brother, ultimately they will also practice cannibalism. Okay? They will eat you one day because that is a disgusting spirit. It goes against our fellowship in this. So if you receive benefits from the fellowship, you also should accept the obligations of the fellowship. Let's talk about a second thing. Let's talk about releasing conferences. My father, in gaining the understanding of a fellowship, much of this came out of his examination. What did not work well in his early days of salvation and ministry in a denomination? A denomination, I repeat the definition again, it has to do with centralized control. It's groups of pastors, groups of churches. They're held together, but there is centralized control. The decision making is always from headquarters. The focus is always central and headquarters. So one of the strengths of our fellowship is our conferences. Conferences are powerful. Conferences are very stirring. God stirs people's hearts to do right. People gain direction. What should I do in my life and ministry? They gain that in conference. Resources are raised for world evangelism, and we're able to do the work of God because we raise money. World evangelism is incredibly expensive. One of the benefits and blessings of a conference is we're able to raise money. We can afford to plant churches around the world because, in part, of our conferences. So, from the beginning, knowing the weakness of a denomination, my father saw all the decisions had to come through. Can we plant somebody? Let's check with headquarters. How do we get money into missionary? Headquarters has to meet. They got to decide this. So Dad, from the beginning, said, that is not working well, so we won't operate that way. So when we began to plant churches from the beginning, my father deliberately decentralized. And one of the powerful things that he did is, in the beginning, he released the Tucson church to have a conference. Back then, the Flagstaff church was very strong, and he released them to have their own conferences. They didn't have lots and lots of churches, but my father did that so that there would be, in another place, in another area, there would be the blessing, the strength, the growth that would come out of conferences. So that has been an ongoing strategy that we have, is that we release conferences. This happens in two main ways. We have released numbers of area conferences. An area conference is when you have a geographical location where there are not enough churches that they have planted to have what we call an organic conference. Organic is homegrown. We say you can become a conference when you have planted 25 churches, or you have planted and your men have planted a total of 25 churches. But we have released some to have a conference before 25, and we do that to help a geographical area. We're trying to build up a region of, it started in America, but we do this elsewhere. So we have a number of area conferences. They don't technically have enough churches planted to have their own conference, but we do it. McMinnville, Oregon, Carbondale, Illinois, Jacksonville, North Carolina. We released originally to help that area of the United States. That is also true internationally. We have released numbers of churches internationally. Perth, West Australia, and these were ones that originally were area churches. Perth, West Australia, Nogales, Sonora, Mexico, Zwolle in Holland, Waltham Forest in the UK, Nairobi, Kenya, Guangzhou, China, Eldorado Park, South Africa, Cape Cod, Massachusetts, Chilliwack, Canada, Toronto, Canada, Coxtown, India, Brasov, Romania, Suva in the Fiji Islands, Buenos Aires, Argentina, Kampala, Uganda, Vologda in Russia, Davao City, Philippines, Lagos, Nigeria, Footscray in Australia, Lusaka, Zambia, Sydney in Australia, Port Moresby in Papua New Guinea, Guatemala City in Guatemala. These all, some of those then have become organic, but originally we released them to have a conference so that the work of God would be furthered in an area. So it did numbers of things. It helped more people to be exposed to conference. It would be impossible when we planted the church in Perth if the only conference option was Prescott. Perth is a long way away. It takes, dear Lord, it takes more than a day to get there. And just because of cost, there would be very few that we would have ever had come to conference here. But by releasing it in Perth, it enabled many more people to be exposed to conference. Also internationally, we release conferences because this helps develop leaders within the nation. When you start in an international conference, obviously in the beginning, the bulk of the preaching will be done either by visiting preachers or missionaries, but our goal is to raise up workers from within the nation. So then, as they begin planting churches and workers start to rise, we let them preach, which helps them to grow. We let them take offerings. That's another level of responsibility. And so numbers of those on the screen. Perth is no longer just an area conference. That is an organic conference in its own right. Nogales, Zwolle, Waltham Forest, Nairobi. Many of these now would, in their own right, they have more than 25 churches on their own. But how they grew was by releasing area conferences. And we do that in some places. But our overall strategy is we have a plan in place that we release a church to be a conference center. They start holding their own conferences when they have planted a total of 25 churches. That can be that they literally plant 25, or they plant and then their churches plant. But when the aggregate total of their churches reaches 25, they can then host their own conference. And the reason why it isn't that the Lord said from heaven, thou shalt have 25 and no more, and 24 is from hell, but it's just a logical common sense. What you want in a conference is, number one, if they're going to have a conference, we expect them to plant churches. So you've got to have size to be able to plant. And then what we want is ultimately we want them to plant internationally. And I think I explained at some point in the past, when they reach 25 churches, we shift the tithe structure. They may have churches out that tithe 5% to them and 5% to their mother church. When they become a conference center, their churches start tithing full 10% and upstream. As I explained, the fellowship is not this giant pyramid scheme that we get money from all over the world. We release, and we release finances. We have over 3,600 churches now. Many of them, we never get a cent from them, and that's okay, because our plan is to release conference centers, and we have released numbers of organic conference centers in the United States. We have released Chandler, Arizona, Tempe, Arizona, Gallup, New Mexico, El Paso, Texas, San Antonio, Texas, Las Vegas, New Mexico, McAllen, Texas, Killeen, Texas, Ogden, Utah was the latest one in America, and these were organic. They reached 25, and then they started their own conferences. We've released many organic conference centers internationally. Some of these would be Freetown in Sierra Leone, General Santos in the Philippines, Las Mochis in Mexico, Mexicali, BC in Mexico, San Luis, Mexico, Lucena City in the Philippines, Windhoek, Namibia, Rotherhite in London, England, Iloilo City in the Philippines, Tagum City in the Philippines, Mexico City, Mexico, Cebu City in the Philippines, Harare, Zimbabwe. Those are all organic conferences. They had 25, and we released them. So as of right now, I'm teaching this in December of 2023. Right now, we have 15 conference centers in the United States. We have 39 conference centers internationally. So that means we have a total of 54 different conference centers doing what we do in Prescott all over the world. And some of those have 2 per year. So we have right now, December 2023, we have 61 conferences that take place every year around the world, more than one a week. And some weeks it's multiple in there. And that means when you have a conference, that means churches being planted, disciples being raised up, international churches planted, 61 conferences a year. We need to praise God for that and thank God for His goodness. Praise God. Let's talk about Central and South America. One of the things we learned in our fellowship is that Latin people historically have been very open to the gospel. We had a saying for a long time in our fellowship is, who is open to the gospel? M&Ms, Mexicans and military. They are our strongest churches. Were often based on those two groups. But people from Latin countries historically have been very open to the gospel. I think for three main reasons that this is true. Number one, Latin countries are predominantly Catholic. So Catholicism is false. They are not born again. But Catholics do have a basic respect for God. And so Catholics make excellent Christians. My wife was a Catholic, and she is no longer a Catholic, thank God. That's why her name is actually Maria, because she's a good Catholic girl. So Catholicism gives people a respect for God. That's helpful for the gospel. The second thing is, along with their Christian Catholic beliefs, they often have a spiritual worldview. And often this is in unhealthy ways. It's common, many of you that you are of Hispanic descent, you understand they believe in the Blessed Virgin, but they also believe in curandera. They also believe in witchcraft, right? So they have this idea of the spiritual world. They are very open to supernatural things like healing. So that is actually very helpful for the gospel. And the third thing, why Hispanic or Latin people are open to the gospel is often because they have strong family ties. So when you get one in America, this is why so many of our churches are Mexican-based, based on people from Mexico, because when you get one saved, they want their whole family to be saved. And so they will they will invite, they're very evangelistic. So what happened when we began planting churches in Mexico, because of those three factors, the churches began to grow very rapidly. And remember, one of the principles I said is, Pastor Richard learned, we operate by where's the fishing good. And so when we saw the response in Mexico, it was natural that then people began to look at other Latin nations to plant churches. So the churches in Mexico began to look beyond Mexico. Churches in the United States that have a strong Spanish base of any Latin country, they began to look at other Latin nations. So let's talk then about Central America. Right now, in Central America, in the nation of Belize, we have 5 fellowship churches. This is December 2023. El Salvador, we have 9 churches. Right now, in the Honduras, we have 11 churches. In Nicaragua, we have 8 churches. Costa Rica, 3 churches. Panama, we have 6 fellowship churches. And in the nation of Guatemala, we have 20 churches. We have an old trumpet report. Show this is in Frank and Lucy Amato from our church. We sent them to Guatemala City, Guatemala. And this is an early report as they're beginning to build a work in Guatemala City. Then when the Amatos left, they nationalized it and turned it over. The leaders of Guatemala right now are Toniel and Violeta Rodriguez. This is me with them, I think 2 years ago when I went to preach in the conference. I love Guatemalan people. I feel powerful and tall in Guatemala. I challenge them all to basketball, so it was great. I want to show you a video. This is in the conference. I went there in December of 21, and here is the wonderful work that God is doing there, laboring with the same spirit and seeing a work for God. The Amatos did a wonderful work there, and that has continued to go on. So Central America, we have numbers of churches. Thanks. Let's move on. South America. Now begin to move beyond Central America. In the nation of Bolivia, right now we have 16 churches in Bolivia. I have some photos. First of all, here is a recent rally. This is in Bolivia, William Ortiz Church, And as they're building a work for God, 16 churches there. That's Pastor Lamb in the center. He's the one who sent William Ortiz from his church in Las Vegas. But that work is going on. Have a video as well of this. This is in the rally. And one of the amazing things, and also up in the balcony here, and if I remember right now he is busy expanding in a new building to do that. One of the incredible things, many of you will never travel, you know that I travel extensively, is to go to a place, they're not singing in English, they're not praising in English, I have no idea what it is, but you can feel their spirit. And it is the exact same spirit that we would feel in our conference. They have the same heart, the same vision. They are reproducing the vision in a completely other nation. In the nation of Brazil, we currently have 7 churches. In Chile, we have 4 churches. In Colombia, we have 15 churches. We support several churches in Colombia. We have photos. These are various churches in Colombia. This is Felipe Segovia, who just nationalized it, but this is the work that he was building there in Cali, Colombia. Then in the nation, is there other photos or no? Oh yeah, this is also in Colombia. This is Ben Lopez, Ben and Magali Lopez. They're laboring in Colombia as well. I think that's all the photos. Is there another one, or that's the last one? I think. No, more photos. These are brothers. The next one, yeah, that's fine. And this brother is from El Paso, is also laboring in the nation of Colombia. In Ecuador, we have 13 churches. In French Guiana, that is technically part of South America, French speaking, we have 1 church. In the nation of Guyana, we have 5 churches. In Paraguay, we have 1 church. Suriname, 7 churches. Venezuela, 4 churches. Uruguay, we have 2 churches in Uruguay. I have some photos of Uruguay. This is making sure this is the right one. Yes, this is Leo Cespedes in the nation of Uruguay, that he's building a work for God in that nation. In Peru, we have 16 churches. Peru right now is very, very responsive. Move on to the photos from Peru. And this is now the work in the capital, that they're having conference and having rallies in this. I think there's another page of photos, if I remember right. Nope, pull that one back. Okay, so in Peru, we currently have 16 churches, and it's growing rapidly. The nation of Argentina, Tucson actually planted the first church into Buenos Aires, Argentina. From Prescott, we planted 3 churches. Jacksonville, North Carolina planted a church. Spain has a church there. Mexico has planted churches there. And in the early days, there was waves of revival. And so right about the time that Tucson started planting, and Australia planted as well I think they planted 2 into Argentina. It just happened to coincide that there was a national revival. Something very powerful was happening in the nation of Argentina. And so the response was very powerful. I have photos here. This is from the trumpet. And you see this is a couple, Kim Pensinger, Kim and Josie, in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And initially, tremendous response. Australia planted the Zapatas into a city called Rosario in Argentina. And the response was initially tremendous in Argentina. But then there came problems in the nation. They had conflicts between pastors and churches. You had men that made foolish decisions. There were character issues. There were all kinds of problems of various kinds. And so what happened is that response initially, it changed. I think these are early days. This is in Rosario when I'm preaching there. And just was a tremendous response, some incredible miracles back in the day. But the response changed. And so what happened is that it was no longer in an atmosphere of revival. And the majority of the churches in Argentina for quite some time, they struggled. They were not doing well. They were struggling very much. So here's a lesson that I want to give you, and it has to do with the power of leadership. A Bible principle has to do with leadership. God chooses men. The work is all God, but God has leaders, and leaders in many ways can hinder the work of God, or they can release the work of God. Joshua 1 verse 6.
Be strong and of good courage, for to this people you shall divide as an inheritance the land which I swore to their fathers to give them.
Okay, this is a Bible principle. God is speaking to a man, to a leader, Joshua, and he says, you shall divide for an inheritance the land for the people. In other words, God blesses you through a leader. That's a Bible principle. So now we're talking in a nation. So I want you to think about this. This is actually an amazing story. Buenos Aires, the original pastor left. Another man took over, and he had issues. He had a lot of strange things at work in him. There was a young couple in the church that had gotten saved under the first pastor, Juan Pablo and Silvina Cardo. And Juan Pablo is now in the church, and for whatever reason, the pastor that took over disliked him. I don't know if he was threatened by him or whatever. He would not allow Juan Pablo to have any form of ministry in the church at all. Zero. You will do nothing for 7 years. This is incredible. Like, what did I do wrong? He would not tell him, but he was forbidden to have any form of ministry for 7 years. And I have seen people that someone is mean to them for 15 minutes and they can barely stay saved. They looked at me funny. They said, my baby has big ears. I can't even live. 7 years he stayed in the church. He didn't leave. And amazingly, he kept his heart right. And so finally, that man moved on. I don't know where he went. He no longer is in the fellowship. But Harold Warner, the pastor of Tucson, made a change, and he asked Juan Pablo to become the pastor of the church in Buenos Aires. So immediately when he came, I don't know if this was in a Tucson conference or in Prescott. I think it was maybe a Prescott conference. He came to Pastor Mitchell, and he said, Pastor Mitchell, I have now taken over in Argentina. He said, you know the many problems that we've had in the nation. He said, what can I do? What steps can I take to help the nation of Argentina? And my father told him, you have to bring leadership to come preach, because leaders have a different dimension, and that will also bring you growth. So he said, okay, but the problem was many leaders knew of the problems. They weren't excited about going to Argentina. And so he said, Pastor Mitchell, will you help me? And so he said yes. And so the first one he went to was Pastor Paul Stevens. He said, Pastor Stevens, Pastor Wayman Mitchell wants you to come to Argentina. And so he did. God bless him. He persuaded my father to come. He had not been there for many years after our investment. Previously, my father began to come, and then in time, once I was on staff, I began going, I don't remember what year, 2008, it seems like maybe 2009, somewhere in that region. But I began to come, and now I go there every year. One of the things that I do is that I do sermon workshops. I teach pastors how to put together sermons, how to find revelation, how to preach. This was the last one. I think there we had 58 or 60. There were somewhere about 60 pastors from Argentina, even South American nations that are there. That has been very, very powerful. Juan Pablo says that has been very, very helpful in the nation. We have their next photo. They just celebrated their 37th anniversary, and the work that God has done, they are continuing on. Very, very powerful. Under the leadership of Juan Pablo Cardo is that God has turned the atmosphere, the spirit of a nation. There is now a powerful move of God in Argentina again. I mean, revival. When they plant churches, the churches are growing rapidly. We have some photos. This is Santa Fe. That's a church that we originally invested in. We sent George and Irish Shields there. Our investment continues. The church in Santa Fe doing well. Next photo. This is a men's discipleship that they did in the area. That is all men from Argentina, and that is the work that God is doing. For many years, Juan Pablo and the church in Buenos Aires, they were in this tiny little tunnel of a building. It was very, very small, and it was hurting his growth, but he came across a building. The building they were able to get, God helped them supernaturally. This building, they have 3 floors, and on each floor they can seat 400. Just this year, when I was there, this is just the bottom floor. That were here, there were 400 on the bottom floor, and there were, I'm pulling this from memory, it seems like they had another 300 on the second floor watching on video as well. And I'm telling you, the work in Argentina, it is powering on. They have been planting churches. We have a photo from their last conference that was just all of these couples along the front. These are couples that they planted out in the last conference that was just in October, if I remember right. As of right now, there are 58 churches in Argentina, December 2023, and they have planted